Chapter 36. The Flaw in the Plan. He was lying face down on the ground again. The smell of the forest filled his nostrils. He could feel the cold, hard ground beneath his cheek, and the hinge of his glasses, which had been knocked sideways by the fall, cutting into his temple. Every inch of him ached, and the place where the killing curse had hit him felt like the bruise of an old iron-clad punch. He did not stir, but remained exactly where he'd fallen, with his left arm bent out at an awkward angle and his mouth gaping. He had expected to hear cheers of triumph and jubilation at his death, but instead hurried footsteps, whispers, and solicitous murmurs filled the air.
"My lord! My lord!"
It was Bellatrix's voice, and she spoke as if to a lover. Harry did not dare open his eyes, but allowed his other senses to explore his predicament. He knew that his wand was still stowed beneath his robes because he could feel it pressed against his chest and the ground. A slight cushioning effect in the area of his stomach told him that the invisibility cloak was also there, stuffed out of sight.
"My lord!" "That will do,"
said Voldemort's voice. More footsteps. Several people were backing away from the same spot. Desperate to see what was happening and why, Harry opened his eyes by a millimetre. Voldemort seemed to be getting to his feet. Various Death Eaters were hurrying away from him, returning to the crowd lining the clearing. Bellatrix alone remained behind, kneeling beside Voldemort. Harry closed his eyes again and considered what he had seen. The Death Eaters had been huddled round Voldemort, who seemed to have fallen to the ground. Something had happened when he'd hit Harry with the killing curse. Had Voldemort too collapsed? It seemed like it. And both of them had briefly fallen into unconsciousness, and both of them had now returned.
"My lord, let me. I do not require assistance,"
said Voldemort coldly, and though he could not see it, Harry pictured Bellatrix withdrawing a helpful hand.
"The boy, is he dead?"
There was complete silence in the clearing. Nobody approached Harry, but he felt their concentrated gaze. It seemed to press him harder into the ground, and he was terrified a finger and eyelid might twitch.
"You,"
said Voldemort, and there was a bang and a small shriek of pain.
"Examine him. Tell me whether he is dead."
Harry did not know who had been sent to verify. He could only lie there with his heart thumping traitorously and wait to be examined, but at the same time noting, small comfort though it was, that Voldemort was wary of approaching him, that Voldemort had suspected all had not gone to plan. Hands, softer than he'd been expecting, touched Harry's face, pulled back an eyelid, crept beneath his shirt down to his chest and felt his heart. He could hear the woman's fast breathing. Her long hair tickled his face. He knew that she could feel the steady pounding of life against his ribs.
"Is Draco alive? Is he in the castle?"
The whisper was barely audible. Her lips were an inch from his ear, her head bent so low that her long hair shielded his face from the onlookers. "Yes," he breathed back. He felt the hand on his chest contract. Her nails pierced him. Then it was withdrawn. She had sat up. "He is dead," Narcissa Malfoy called to the watchers. And now they shouted. Now they yelled in triumph and stamped their feet, and through his eyelids Harry saw bursts of red and silver light shoot into the air in celebration. Still feigning death on the ground, he understood. Narcissa knew that the only way she would be permitted to enter Hogwarts and find her son was as a part of the conquering army. She no longer cared whether Voldemort won.
"You see,"
screeched Voldemort over the tumult,
"Harry Potter is dead by my hand, and no man alive can threaten me now. Watch! Crucio!"
Harry had been expecting it, knew his body would not be allowed to remain unsullied upon the forest floor. It must be subjected to humiliation to prove Voldemort's victory. He was lifted into the air, and it took all his determination to remain limp, yet the pain he expected did not come. He was thrown once, twice, 3 times into the air. His glasses fell off, and he felt his wand slide a little beneath his robes, but he kept himself floppy and lifeless. When he fell to the ground for the last time, the clearing echoed with jeers and shrieks of laughter.
"Now,"
said Voldemort,
"we go to the castle and show them what has become of their hero. Who shall drag the body? No, wait."
There was a fresh outbreak of laughter, and after a few moments Harry felt the ground trembling beneath him.
"You carry him," Voldemort said. "He will be nice and visible in your arms, will he not? Pick up your little friend, Hagrid, and the glasses. Put on the glasses. He must be recognizable."
Someone slammed Harry's glasses back onto his face with deliberate force, but the enormous hands that lifted him into the air were exceedingly gentle. Harry could feel Hagrid's arms trembling with the force of his heaving sobs. Great tears splashed down upon him as Hagrid cradled Harry in his arms, and Harry did not dare, by movement or word, to intimate to Hagrid that all was not yet lost.
"Move," said
Voldemort, and Hagrid stumbled forward, forcing his way through the close-growing trees back through the forest. Branches caught at Harry's hair and robes, but he lay quiescent, his mouth lolling open, his eyes shut, and in the darkness, while the Death Eaters crowded all round them, and while Hagrid sobbed blindly, nobody looked to see whether a pulse beat in the exposed neck of Harry Potter. The two giants crashed along behind the Death Eaters. Harry could hear trees creaking and falling as they passed. They made so much din that the birds rose shrieking into the sky, and even the jeers of the Death Eaters were drowned. The victorious procession marched onward toward the open ground, and after a while Harry could tell, by the lighting of the darkness through his closed eyelids, that the trees were beginning to thin. "Bane!" Hagrid's unexpected bellow nearly forced Harry's eyes open. "Happy now, are you? That you didn't fight, you cowardly bunch of nags? Are you happy now, Harry Potter's dead?" Hagrid could not continue, but broke down into fresh tears. Harry wondered how many centaurs were watching their procession pass. He dared not open his eyes to look. Some of the Death Eaters called insults at the centaurs as they left them behind. A little later, Harry sensed, for a freshening of air, that they had reached the edge of the forest. "Stop!" Harry thought that Hagrid must have been forced to obey Voldemort's command, because he lurched a little. And now a chill settled over them where they stood, and Harry heard the rasping breath of the Dementors that patrolled the outer trees. They would not affect him now. The fact of his own survival burned inside him, a talisman against them, as though his father's stag kept guardian in his heart. Someone passed close by Harry, and he knew it was Voldemort himself because he spoke a moment later, his voice magically magnified so that it swelled through the grounds, crashing upon Harry's eardrums.
"Harry Potter is dead. He was killed as he ran away trying to save himself while you laid your lives down for him. We bring you his body as proof that your hero is gone. The battle is won. You've lost half your fighters. My Death Eaters outnumber you, and the boy who lived is finished. There will be no more war. Anyone who continues to resist, man, woman, or child, will be slaughtered, as will every member of their family. Come out of the castle now, kneel before me, and you shall be spared. Your parents and children, your brothers and sisters will live and be forgiven, and you will join me in the new world we shall build together."
There was silence in the grounds and from the castle. Voldemort was so close to him that Harry did not dare open his eyes again.
"Come,"
said Voldemort, and Harry heard him move ahead, and Hagrid was forced to follow. Now Harry opened his eyes a fraction, and saw Voldemort striding in front of them, wearing the great snake Nagini round his shoulders, now free of her enchanted cage. But Harry had no possibility of extracting the wand that concealed his robes without being noticed by the Death Eaters, who marched on either side of them through the slowly lightening darkness.
"Harry,"
sobbed Hagrid.
"Oh, Harry, Harry."
Harry shut his eyes tight again. He knew that they were approaching the castle, and strained his ears to distinguish, above the gleeful voices of the Death Eaters and their tramping footsteps, signs of life from those within.
"Stop!"
The Death Eaters came to a halt. Harry heard them spreading out in a line facing the open front doors of the school. He could see, even through his closed eyelids, the reddish glow that meant light streamed upon him from the entrance hall. He waited. Any moment the people for whom he tried to die would see him, lying apparently dead in Hagrid's arms.
"No!"
The scream was more terrible because he had never expected or dreamed that Professor McGonagall could make such a sound. He heard another woman laughing nearby and knew that Bellatrix gloried in McGonagall's despair. He squinted again for a second and saw the open doorway filling with people as the survivors of the battle came out to the front steps to face their vanquishers and see the truth of Harry's death for themselves. He saw Voldemort standing a little in front of him, stroking Nagini's head with a single white finger. He closed his eyes again.
No! No! Harry! Harry!
Ron, Hermione's and Ginny's voices were worse than McGonagall's. Harry wanted nothing more than to call back, yet he made himself lie silent, and their cries acted like a trigger. The crowd of survivors took up the cause, screaming and yelling abuse at the Death Eaters until...
"Silence!"
cried Voldemort, and there was a bang and a flash of bright light, and silence was forced upon all of them.
"It is over! Set him down, Hagrid, at my feet, where he belongs."
Harry felt himself lowered onto the grass.
"You see,"
said Voldemort, and Harry felt him striding backward and forward right beside the place where he lay.
"Harry Potter is dead. Do you understand now, deluded ones? He was nothing, ever, but a boy who relied on others to sacrifice themselves for him."
"He beat you!" yelled Ron, and the charm broke, and the defenders of Hogwarts were shouting and screaming again until a second, more powerful bang extinguished their voices once more.
"He was killed while trying to sneak out of the castle grounds,"
said Voldemort, and there was relish in his voice for the lie.
"He killed while he was trying to save himself."
But Voldemort broke off. Harry heard a scuffle and a shout, then another bang, a flash of light, and a grunt of pain. He opened his eyes, an infinitesimal amount. Someone had broken free of the crowd and charged at Voldemort. Harry saw the figure hit the ground. Disarmed, Voldemort throwing the challenger's wand aside and laughing.
"And who is this?"
he said in his soft snake's hiss.
"Who has volunteered to demonstrate what happens to those who continue to fight when the battle is lost?"
Bellatrix gave a delighted laugh.
"It is Neville Longbottom, my lord, the boy who has been giving the Carrows so much trouble, the son of the Aurors, remember?" "Ah, yes, I remember,"
said Voldemort, looking down at Neville, who was struggling back to his feet, unarmed and unprotected, standing in the no-man's land between the survivors and the Death Eaters.
"But you are pure-blood, aren't you, my brave boy?"
Voldemort asked Neville, who stood facing him, his empty hands curled into fists. "So what if I am?" said Neville loudly.
"You show spirit and bravery, and you come of noble stock. You make a very valuable Death Eater. We need your kind, Neville Longbottom."
"I'll join you when hell freezes over," said Neville. "Dumbledore's army!" he shouted, and there was an answering cheer from the crowd whom Voldemort's silencing charm seemed unable to hold.
"Very well,"
said Voldemort, and Harry heard more danger in the silkiness of his voice than in his most powerful curse.
"If that is your choice, Longbottom, we revert to the original plan. On your head," he said quietly. "Be it."
Still watching through his lashes, Harry saw Voldemort wave his wand. Seconds later, out of one of the castle's shattered windows, something that looked like a misshapen bird flew through the half-light and landed in Voldemort's hand. He shook the mildewed object by its pointed end, and it dangled, empty and ragged. The sorting hat.
"There will be no sorting any more at Hogwarts School," said Voldemort. "There will be no more houses. The emblem, shield, and colours of my noble ancestor, Salazar Slytherin, will suffice for everyone. Won't they, Neville Longbottom?"
He pointed his wand at Neville, who grew rigid and still, then forced the hat onto Neville's head so that it slipped down below his eyes. There was movement from the watching crowd in front of the castle, and as wont, the Death Eaters raised their wands, holding the fighters of Hogwarts at bay.
"Neville here is now going to demonstrate what happens to anybody foolish enough to continue to oppose me,"
said Voldemort, and with a flick of his wand he caused the sorting hat to burst into flames. Screams split the dawn, and Neville was aflame, rooted to the spot, unable to move, and Harry could not bear it. He must act. And then many things happened at the same moment. They heard uproar from the distant boundary of the school as what sounded like hundreds of people came swarming over the out-of-sight walls and pelted toward the castle, uttering loud war cries. At the same time, Grawp came lumbering round the side of the castle and yelled, "Hagar!" His cry was answered by roars from Voldemort's giants. They ran at Grawp like bull elephants, making the earth quake. Then came hooves and the twangs of bows, and arrows were suddenly falling amongst the Death Eaters, who broke ranks, shouting to their surprise. Harry pulled the invisibility cloak from inside his robe, swung it over himself, and sprang to his feet, as Neville moved too. In one swift, fluid motion, Neville broke free of the body-bind curse upon him. The flaming hat fell off of him, and he drew from its depths something silver with a glittering rubied handle. The slash of the silver blade could not be heard over the roar of the oncoming crowd, or the sounds of the clashing giants, of the stampeding centaurs, and yet it seemed to draw every eye. With a single stroke, Neville sliced off the great snake's head, which spun high into the air, gleaming in the light flooding from the entrance hall, and Voldemort's mouth was open in a scream of fury that nobody could hear, and the snake's body thudded to the ground at his feet. Hidden beneath the invisibility cloak, Harry cast a shield charm between Neville and Voldemort before the latter could raise his wand. Then, over screams and roars and the tumultuous, thunderous stamps of the battling giants, Hagrid's yell came loudest of all. "Harry!" Hagrid shouted. "Harry! Where's Harry?" Chaos reigned. The charging centaurs were scattering the Death Eaters. Everyone was fleeing the giant stamping feet, and nearer thundered the reinforcements that had come from who knew where. Harry saw great winged creatures soaring round the heads of Voldemort's giants, Thestrals and Buckbeak the Hippogriff scratching at their eyes while Grawp punched and pummeled them. And now the wizards, defenders of Hogwarts and Death Eaters alike, were being forced back into the castle. Harry was shooting jinxes and curses at any Death Eater he could see, and they crumpled, not knowing who or what had hit them, and their bodies were trampled by the retreating crowd. Still hidden beneath the invisibility cloak, Harry was buffeted into the entrance hall. He was searching for Voldemort, and saw him across the room, firing spells from his wand as he backed into the great hall, still screaming instructions to his followers as he sent curses flying left and right. Harry cast more shield charms, and Voldemort's would-be victims, Seamus Finnegan and Hannah Abbott, darted past him into the great hall, where they joined the fight already flourishing inside it. And now there were more, even more people storming up the front steps, and Harry saw Charlie Weasley overtaking Horace Slughorn, who was still wearing his emerald pyjamas. They seemed to have returned at the head of what looked like the families and friends of every Hogwarts student who had remained to fight, along with the shopkeepers and homeowners of Hogsmeade. The centaurs, Bane, Ronan and Megorian, burst into the hall with a great clatter of hooves, as behind Harry the door that led to the kitchens was blasted off its hinges. The house elves of Hogwarts swarmed into the entrance hall, screaming and waving carving knives and cleavers, and at their head, the locket of Regulus Black bouncing off his chest, was Kreacher, his bullfrog's voice audible even above the din. "Fight! Fight! Fight for my master, defender of house elves! Fight the Dark Lord in the name of brave Regulus! Fight!" They were hacking and stabbing at the ankles and shins of Death Eaters, their tiny faces alive with malice, and everywhere Harry looked, Death Eaters were folding under the sheer weight of numbers, overcome by spells, dragging arrows from wounds, stabbed in the leg by house elves, or simply attempting to escape, but swallowed by the oncoming horde. But it wasn't over yet. Harry sped between duellers, past struggling prisoners, and into the great hall. Voldemort was in the centre of the battle, and he was striking and smiting all within reach. Harry could not get a clear shot, but fought his way nearer, still invisible, and the great hall became more and more crowded as everyone who could walk forced their way inside. Harry saw Yaxley slammed to the floor by George and Lee Jordan, saw Dolohov fall with a scream at Flitwick's hands, saw Walden McNair thrown across the room by Hagrid, hit the stone wall opposite, and slide unconscious to the ground. He saw Ron and Neville bringing down Fenrir Greyback, Aberforth stunning Rookwood, Arthur and Percy flooring Thickness, and Lucius and Narcissa Malfoy running through the crowd, not even attempting to fight, screaming for their son. Voldemort was now duelling McGonagall, Slughorn, and Kingsley all at once, and there was a cold hatred in his face as they wove and ducked all round him, unable to finish him. Bellatrix was fighting too, 50 yards away from Voldemort, and like her master she duelled 3 at once, Hermione, Ginny and Luna, all battling their hardest. But Bellatrix was equal to them, and Harry's attention was diverted as a killing curse shot so close to Ginny that she missed death by an inch. He changed course, running at Bellatrix rather than Voldemort, but before he'd gone a few steps he was knocked sideways. "Not my daughter, you bitch!" Mrs. Weasley threw off her cloak as she ran, freeing her arms. Bellatrix spun on the spot, roaring with laughter at the sight of her new challenger. "Get out of my way!" shouted Mrs. Weasley to the three girls, and with a swipe of her wand she began to duel. Harry watched the terror and elation as Molly Weasley's hand slashed and twirled, and Bellatrix's smile faltered and became a snarl. Jets of light flew from both wands. The floor around the witch's feet became hot and cracked. Both women were fighting to kill. "No!" Mrs. Weasley shouted as a few students ran forward, trying to come to her aid. "Get back! Get back! She is mine!" Hundreds of people now lined the walls, watching the two fights, Voldemort and his three opponents, Bellatrix and Molly, and Harry stood, invisible, torn between both, wanting to attack and yet to protect, unable to be sure that he would not hit the innocent. "What will happen to your children when I've killed you?" taunted Bellatrix, as mad as her master, capering as Molly's curses danced round her. "When Mummy's gone the same way as Freddie?" "You will never touch our children again!" screamed Mrs. Weasley. Bellatrix laughed, the same exhilarated laugh her cousin Sirius had given as he toppled backward through the veil, and suddenly Harry knew what was going to happen before it did. Molly's curse soared beneath Bellatrix's outstretched arm and hit her square in the chest, directly over her heart. Bellatrix's gloating smile froze, her eyes seemed to bulge. For the tiniest space of time she knew what had happened, and then she toppled, and the watching crowd roared, and Voldemort screamed. Harry felt as though he'd turned in slow motion. He saw McGonagall, Kingsley and Slughorn blasted backward, flailing and writhing through the air as Voldemort's fury at the fall of his last, best lieutenant exploded like the force of a bomb. Voldemort raised his wand and directed it at Molly Weasley. "Protego!" shouted Harry, and the shield charm expanded in the middle of the hall, and Voldemort stared around for the source as Harry pulled off the invisibility cloak at last. The yell of shock, the cheers, the scream on every side of "Harry! He's alive!" was stifled at once. The crowd was afraid, and silence fell abruptly and completely as Voldemort and Harry looked at each other and began at the same moment to circle each other. "I don't want anyone else to help me," Harry said loudly, and in the total silence his voice carried like a trumpet call. "It's got to be like this. It's got to be me." Voldemort hissed.
"Potter doesn't mean that,"
he said, his red eyes wide.
"That isn't how it works, is it? That's not how you work. Who are you going to use as a shield today, Potter?"
"Nobody," said Harry simply. "There are no more Horcruxes. It's just you and me. Neither can live while the other survives, and one of us is about to leave for good."
"One of us?"
jeered Voldemort, and his whole body was taut, and his red eyes stared, a snake that was about to strike.
"You think it will be you, do you? The boy has survived by accident, and because Dumbledore was pulling the strings."
"Accident, was it, that my mother died to save me?" asked Harry. They were still moving sideways, both of them, in that perfect circle, maintaining the same distance from each other, and for Harry no face existed but Voldemort's. "Accident when I decided to fight in the graveyard. Accident that I didn't defend myself tonight and still survived, and returned to fight again."
"Accidents!"
screamed Voldemort, but still he did not strike, and the watching crowd was frozen as if petrified, and the hundreds in the hall, no one seemed to breathe but they too.
"Accident and chance, and the fact that you crouched and snivelled behind the skirts of greater men and women, and permitted me to kill them for you."
"You won't be killing anyone else tonight," said Harry as they circled and stared into each other's eyes, green into red. "You won't be able to kill any of them ever again. Don't you get it? I was ready to die to stop you from hurting these people."
"But you did not!"
"I meant to, and that's what's did it. I've done what my mother did. They're protected from you. Haven't you noticed how none of those spells you've been putting on them are binding? You can't torture them. You can't touch them. You don't learn from your mistakes, Riddle, do you?"
"You dare!"
"Yes, I dare," said Harry. "I know things you don't, Tom Riddle. I know lots of important things that you don't. Want to hear some, before you make another big mistake?" Voldemort did not speak, but prowled in a circle, and Harry knew that he kept him temporarily memorized and at bay, held back for the faintest possibility that Harry may indeed know a final secret.
"Is it love again?"
said Voldemort, his snake's eyes jeering.
"Dumbledore's favourite solution? Love, which he claimed conquered death, though love did not stop him falling from the tower and breaking like an old waxwork. Love, which did not prevent me stamping out your mud-blood mother like a cockroach, Potter. And nobody seems to love you enough to run forward this time and take my curse. So what will stop you dying now when I strike?"
"Just one thing," said Harry, and still they circled each other, wrapped in each other, held apart by nothing but the last secret.
"If it is not love that will save you this time," said Voldemort, "you must believe that you have magic I do not, or else a weapon more powerful than mine."
"I'd believe both," said Harry, and he saw shock flit across the snake-like face, though it was instantly dispelled. Voldemort began to laugh, and the sound was more frightening than his screams. Humourless and insane, it echoed round the silent hall.
"You think you know magic, more magic than I do," he said. Than Lord Voldemort, who has performed magic that Dumbledore himself never even dreamed of."
"Oh, he dreamed of it," said Harry. "But he knew more than you, knew enough not to do what you've done."
"You mean he was weak?" screamed Voldemort. "Too weak to dare, too weak to take what might have been his, what will be mine."
"No, he was cleverer than you," said Harry. "A better wizard, a better man."
"I brought about the death of Albus Dumbledore."
"You thought you did," said Harry, "but you were wrong." For the first time the watching crowd stirred as the hundreds of people round the walls drew breath as one.
"Dumbledore is dead!"
Voldemort hurled the words at Harry as though they would cause him unendurable pain.
"His body decays in the marble tomb on the grounds of this castle. I have seen it, Potter, and he will not return."
"Yes, Dumbledore is dead," said Harry calmly, "but you didn't have him killed. He chose his manner of dying, chose it months before he died, arranged the whole thing with the man you thought was your servant."
"What childish dream is this?"
said Voldemort, but still he did not strike, and his red eyes did not waver from Harry's. "Severus Snape wasn't yours," said Harry. "Snape was Dumbledore's from the moment you started hunting down my mother, and you never realized it, because of the thing you can't understand. You never saw Snape cast a Patronus, did you, Riddle?" Voldemort did not answer. They continued to circle each other like wolves, about to tear each other apart. "Snape's Patronus was a doe," said Harry, "the same as my mother's, because he loved her for nearly all his life, from the time when they were children. You should have realized," he said as he saw Voldemort's nostrils flare. "He asked you to spare her life, didn't he?"
"He desired her, that was all," sneered Voldemort. "But when she had gone, he agreed that there were other women, and of purer blood, worthier of him."
"Of course he told you that," said Harry. "But he was Dumbledore's spy from the moment you threatened her, and he's been working against you ever since. Dumbledore was already dying when Snape finished him."
"It matters not,"
shrieked Voldemort, who had followed every word with rapt attention, but now let out a cackle of mad laughter.
"It matters not whether Snape was mine or Dumbledore's, or what petty obstacles they tried to put in my path. I crushed them as I crushed your mother, Snape's supposed great love. Oh, but it all makes sense, Potter, and in ways that you do not understand. Dumbledore was trying to keep the Elder Wand from me. He intended that Snape should be the true master of the wand, but I got there ahead of you, little boy. I reached the wand before you could get your hands on it. I understood the truth before you caught up. I killed Severus Snape 3 hours ago, and the Elder Wand, the Death Stick, the Wand of Destiny, is truly mine. Dumbledore's last plan went wrong, Harry Potter."
"Yes, it did," said Harry. "You're right. But before you try to kill me, I would advise you to think about what you've done. Think, and try for some remorse, Riddle."
"What is this?"
Of all the things that Harry had said to him, beyond any revelation or taunt, nothing had shocked Voldemort like this. Harry saw his pupil contract to small slits, saw the skin round his eyes whiten. "It's your last chance," said Harry. "It's all you've got left. I've seen what you'll be otherwise. Be a man. Try. Try for some remorse."
"You dare,"
said Voldemort again. "Yes, I dare," said Harry. "Because Dumbledore's last plan hasn't backfired on me at all. It's backfired on you, Riddle." Voldemort's hand was trembling on the Elder Wand, and Harry gripped Draco's very tightly. The moment, he knew, was seconds away. "That wand still isn't working properly for you because you murdered the wrong person. Severus Snape was never the true master of the Elder Wand. He never defeated Dumbledore.
"He killed—"
Aren't you listening? Snape never beat Dumbledore. Dumbledore's death was planned between the two of them. Dumbledore intended to die undefeated, the wand's last true master. If all had gone as planned, the wand's power would have died with him, because it had never been won from him."
"But then, Potter, Dumbledore's as good as gave me that wand."
Voldemort's voice shook with malicious pleasure.
"I stole the wand from its last master's tomb. I removed it against its last master's wishes. Its power is mine."
"You still don't get it, Riddle, do you? Possessing the wand isn't enough. Holding it, using it, doesn't really make it yours. Didn't you listen to Ollivander? The wand chooses the wizard. The Elder Wand recognized a new master before Dumbledore died, someone who'd never laid a hand on it. The new master removed the wand from Dumbledore against his will, never realizing exactly what he'd done, or that the world's most dangerous wand had given him its allegiance." Voldemort's chest rose and fell rapidly, and Harry could feel the curse coming, feel it building inside the wand pointed at his face. The true master of the Elder Wand was Draco Malfoy. Blank shock showed in Voldemort's face for a moment, but then it was gone.
"What does it matter?"
he said softly.
"Even if you are right, Potter, it makes no difference to you and me. You no longer have the Phoenix Wand. We duel on skill alone, and after I have killed you, I can attend to Draco Malfoy."
"But you're too late," said Harry. "You've missed your chance. I got there first. I overpowered Draco weeks ago. I took his wand from him." Harry twitched the hawthorn wand, and he felt the eyes of everyone in the hall upon it.
"So it all comes down to this, doesn't it?"
whispered Harry. "Does the wand in your hand know its last master was disarmed? Because if it does, I am the true master of the Elder Wand." A red-gold glow burst suddenly across the enchanted sky above them as an edge of dazzling sun appeared over the sill of the nearest window. The light hit both their faces at the same time, so that Voldemort's was suddenly a flaming blur. Harry heard the high-pitched shriek as he too yelled his best hope to the heavens, pointing Draco's wand.
"Avada Kedavra!
Expelliarmus!" The bang was like a cannon blast, and the gold flames that had erupted between them at the dead centre of the circle they had been treading marked the point where the spells collided. Harry saw Voldemort's green jet meet his own spell, saw the Elder Wand fly high, dark against the sunrise, spinning across the enchanted ceiling like the head of Nagini, spinning through the air toward the master it would not kill, who had come to take full possession of it at last. And Harry, with the unerring skill of the Seeker, caught the wand in his free hand as Voldemort fell backward, arms splayed, the slit pupils of the scarlet eyes rolling upward. Tom Riddle hit the floor with a mundane finality, his body feeble and shrunken, the white hands empty, the snake-like face vacant and unknowing. Voldemort was dead, killed by his own rebounding curse, and Harry stood with two wands in his hand, staring down at his enemy's shell. One shivering second of silence, the shock of the moment suspended, and then the tumult broke out around Harry as the screams and the cheers and the roars of the watchers rent the air. The fierce new sun dazzled the windows as they thundered toward him, and the first to reach him were Ron and Hermione, and it was their arms that were wrapped round him, their incomprehensible shouts that deafened him. Then Ginny, Neville and Luna were there, and then all the Weasleys, and Hagrid, and Kingsley and McGonagall, and Flitwick and Sprout, and Harry could not hear a word that anyone was shouting, not tell whose hands were seizing him, pulling him, trying to hug some part of him, hundreds of them pressing in, all of them determined to touch the boy who lived, the reason it was over at last. The sun rose steadily over Hogwarts, and the great hall blazed with life and light. Harry was an indispensable part of the mingled outpourings of jubilation and mourning, of grief and celebration. They wanted them there with them, their leader and symbol, their saviour and their guide, and that he had not slept, that he craved the company of only a few of them, occurred to no one. He must speak to the bereaved, clasp their hands, witness their tears, receive their thanks, hear the news now creeping in from every quarter of the morning as it drew on, that the imperious up and down the country had come back to themselves, that Death Eaters were fleeing or else being captured, that the innocent of Azkaban were being released at this very moment, and that Kingsley Shacklebolt had been named temporary Minister of Magic. They moved Voldemort's body and laid it in a chamber off the hall, away from the bodies of Fred, Tonks, Lupin, Colin Creevey, and 50 others who died fighting him. McGonagall had replaced the house tables, but no one was sitting according to house any more. They were all jumbled together, teachers and pupils, ghosts and parents, centaurs and house elves, and Firenze lay recovering in a corner, and Grawp peered in through a smashed window, and people were throwing food into his laughing mouth. After a while, exhausted and drained, Harry found himself sitting on a bench beside Luna.
"I'd want some peace and quiet if it were me," she said.
"I'd love some," he replied.
"I'll distract them all," she said. "Use your cloak."
But before he could say a word, she'd cried,
"Ooh, look, a blibbering humdinger!"
and pointed out of the window. Everyone who heard looked round, and Harry slid the cloak up over himself and got to his feet. Now he could move through the hall without interference. He spotted Ginny 2 tables away. She was sitting with her head on her mother's shoulder. There would be time to talk later. Hours and days, and maybe years in which to talk. He saw Neville, the Sword of Gryffindor, lying beside his plate as he ate, surrounded by a knot of fervent admirers. Along the aisle between the tables he walked, and he spotted the 3 Malfoys, huddled together as though unsure whether or not they were supposed to be there, but no one was paying any attention to them. Everywhere he looked he saw the families reunited, and finally he saw the 2 whose company he craved most.
"It's me,"
he muttered, crouching down between them.
"Will you come with me?"
They stood up at once, and together he, Ron, and Hermione left the great hall. Great chunks were missing from the marble staircase, part of the balustrade was gone, and rubble and bloodstains occurred every few steps as they climbed. Somewhere in the distance they could hear Peeves zooming through the corridors, singing a victory song of his own composition. "We did it, we bashed 'em, we Potty's the one, and Voldy's gone mouldy, so let's all have fun."
"Really gives a feeling for the scope and tragedy of the thing, doesn't it?" said Ron, pushing open a door to let Harry and Hermione through. Happiness would come, Harry thought, but at that moment it was muffled by exhaustion, and the pain of losing Fred and Lupin and Tonks pierced him like a physical wound every couple of steps. Most of all he felt the stupendous relief and a longing to sleep, but first he owed an explanation to Ron and Hermione, who'd stuck with him for so long, and deserved the truth. Painstakingly he recounted what he had seen in the Pensieve, and what had happened in the forest, and they had not even begun to express all their shock and amazement when at last they arrived at the place where they had been walking, though none of them had mentioned their destination. Since he had last seen it, the gargoyle guarding the entrance to the headmaster's study had been knocked aside. It stood lopsided, looking a little punch-drunk, and Harry wondered whether it would be able to distinguish passwords any more. "Can we go up?" he asked the gargoyle. "Feel free,"
groaned the statue. They clambered over him and onto the spiral stone staircase that moved slowly up like an escalator. Harry pushed open the door at the top. He had one brief glimpse of the stone Pensieve on the desk where he'd left it, and then an ear-splitting noise made him cry out, thinking of curses and returning Death Eaters and the rebirth of Voldemort. But it was applause. All round the walls, the headmasters and headmistresses of Hogwarts were giving him a standing ovation. They waved their hats, and in some cases their wigs. They reached through their frames to grip each other's hands. They danced up and down on the chairs in which they'd been painted. Dilys Derwent sobbed unabashedly. Dexter Fortescue was waving his ear-trumpet, and Phineas Nigellus called in his high, reedy voice, "And let it be noted that Slytherin House played its part. Let our contribution not be forgotten." But Harry had eyes only for the man who stood in the largest portrait directly behind the headmaster's chair. Tears were sliding down from behind the half-moon spectacles into the long silver beard, and the pride and the gratitude emanating from him filled Harry with the same balm as Phoenix song. At last Harry held up his hands, and the portraits fell respectively silent, beaming and mopping their eyes and waiting eagerly for him to speak. He directed his words at Dumbledore, however, and chose them with enormous care. Exhausted and bleary-eyed though he was, he must make one last effort, seeking one last piece of advice. "The thing that was hidden in the snitch," he began. "I dropped it in the forest. I don't know exactly where, but I'm not going to go looking for it again. Do you agree?"
"My dear boy, I do,"
said Dumbledore, while his fellow pictures looked confused and curious.
"A wise and courageous decision, but no less than what I would have expected of you. Does anyone else know where it fell?"
"No one," said Harry, and Dumbledore nodded his satisfaction. "I'm going to keep Ignotus's present, though," said Harry, and Dumbledore beamed.
"But of course, Harry. It is yours forever until you pass it on."
"And then there's this." Harry held up the Elder Wand, and Ron and Hermione looked at it with reverence that, even in his befuddled and sleep-deprived state, Harry did not like to see. "I don't want it," said Harry.
"What?"
said Ron loudly.
"Are you mental?"
"I know it's powerful," said Harry wearily, "but I was happier with mine, so—" He rummaged in the pouch hung round his neck and pulled out the two halves of the holly just still connected by the finest thread of phoenix feather. Hermione had said that they could not be repaired, that the damage was too severe. All he knew was that if this did not work, nothing would. He laid the broken wand upon the headmaster's desk and touched it with the very tip of the Elder Wand and said, "Reparo." As his wand resealed, red sparks flew out of its end. Harry knew that he'd succeeded. He picked up the holly and phoenix wand and felt a sudden warmth in his fingers, as though wand and hand were rejoicing at the reunion. "I'm putting the Elder Wand," he told Dumbledore, who was watching him with enormous affection and admiration, "back where it came from. It can stay there. If I die a natural death like Ignotus, its power will be broken, won't it? The previous master will never have been defeated. That'll be the end of it." Dumbledore nodded. They smiled at each other. "Are you sure?" said Ron. There was the faintest trace of longing in his voice as he looked at the Elder Wand. "I think Harry's right," said Hermione quietly. "The wand's more trouble than it's worth," said Harry, "and quite honestly—" He looked away from the painted portraits, thinking now only of the four-poster bed lying in wait for him in Gryffindor Tower, and wondering whether Creature might bring him a sandwich there. "I've had enough trouble for a lifetime." I mean, we can for a minute if you want. Or
Yeah,
I could just...
I think we need to talk about some stuff. Now we have 2 chapters where so much happened.
Yes.
I think some things need to be said. First off, let's just... Mrs. Weasley. Bravo. That was awesome.
"Not my daughter, you bitch!"
Right.
It's great. It's great.
Oh my god, yeah. That was awesome.
It was a
great
great
ending.
Right?
And Ron's just like drooling. But it's an unbeatable
wand!
Yes, applause for Mrs. Weasley.
Yes.
For sure.
Also, round of applause for Neville. Longbottom.
Yes. I forgot that was a shout. Yes. Neville, the man.
Pulled the sword, killed the snake. Get it, Neville. Heck yes.
So because he killed the snake, we can assume that's the same sword. So did it just like disappear from...
Well, it said he still had the sword when he was eating after.
I know, but the goblin had it.
Oh, yeah.
Was he just there like, look what I got back, guys, and just disappears?
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yep.
Neville is the man. I was halfway expecting him just to stab Voldemort. I was like getting antsy for it, like, do it, be the one.
And then the snake. Ah, oh, it's so awesome.
I mean, it was cool that Harry killed Voldemort too. But...
How he killed him too was awesome.
Oh yeah. Draco was the master.
Draco was the master of the Elder Wand.
And it's funny that the only reason Draco was the master was because Voldemort sent him on that mission.
And Draco disarmed Dumbledore in the tower.
Yes.
It was a good ending, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was just, what a way to end. Creature and the house elves.
Oh yeah, and Creature. Just everyone coming back.
Yes.
Creature leading the charge.
Yes. Slughorn fighting in his pajamas.
Oh yeah, that gave me a hearty chuckle.
Buckbeak.
And Buckbeak.
Buckbeak came back.
Even the centaurs and everyone.
Yeah, even the centaurs. Yep.
Poor Death Eaters who got trampled out
By
there.
the centaur. I know. I know.
And poor Hagrid.
Yeah.
That had to be rough.
That
for him.
was probably hard for Hagrid. Parallel. End of book 7. He's carrying Harry in his arms.
He's bringing, yeah.
Yeah, very beginning of book 1. He's carrying baby Harry.
Oh boy, we got a lot of chat going on.
Oh yeah. Harry tried to redeem Voldemort. He tried to give him a chance. He did. He tried to give him a shot. He really did.
Yeah, I agree. I think Voldemort killed himself.
Yeah, Harry defended himself.
Exactly.
With what spell?
Expelliarmus.
Expelliarmus, the same spell we always use every time.
If there's one thing Dumbledore has taught Harry, it's you gotta have style.
Right. And everyone's telling him, Expelliarmus, maybe learn some other magic. And Harry's just like, no, it's my one true love.
You think it was his, teen angst that made him do that? Just, you know what? You told me not to, I'm gonna do it. And I'm gonna beat Voldemort. How about that?
Well, doesn't Bruce Lee have a quote that says, I fear not the man who knows 10,000 kicks, but the man who's practiced one kick 10,000 times?
Yes, I'm pretty sure that's Bruce Lee who said that, yeah.
That's Harry and Expelliarmus. Hermione mentions earlier that remorse is the only way to undo a Horcrux. Harry gave Voldemort the chance. Yeah, he did, I think. That's definitely an important point. Yeah, the wand was never going to kill Harry because it belonged to Harry. Yep. Which Voldemort never understood, never bothered to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know what they did with Voldemort's body after.
Fed it to the giant squid.
Fed it to the giant squid.
Just toss him in the lake. They gave him to Grop. He pulled the pine tree and just flung him out into the wilderness.
Oh, that's cool. You got a broom. That's pretty sweet.
That is pretty cool.
Is it a Comet 260 or a Firebolt or a Nimbus? What is it? Also, can we just give props to the Malfoys? Narcissa lied to Voldemort's face.
Yes.
The power of a mother's love triumphs over everything.
I guess there's another parallel. Mother's love prevails.
Yeah, mother's love prevails.
Defeats Voldemort once again.
Yep. She doesn't care. She just wants her family. Lucius doesn't care. He just wants his family.
Mm-hmm. Also, Voldemort was in more denial than Hermione was about the Deathly Hallows.
All right.
Here.
Yeah.
Like, dude, he's alive. You just tried to kill him a second time. What else do you need? All your Death Eaters saw it. You killed him, but you didn't kill him.
Yep.
No, I can still kill him.
Yep.
Third time's the charm.
Voldemort just can't understand. Just can't get it. That old love magic.
Mm-hmm.
That old love magic. I love that too. Bellatrix was whispering as if to a lover.
Yeah.
My lord. My lord.
You did it, my lord.
Oh, Voldy.
Just couldn't do it.
It's such a good ending too, that he doesn't want the Elder Wand. He just wants
his wand.
His wand.
This mine.
I
want my wand.
Another set of 3 things in the books. Very true. Yep.
Well, I mean, Harry should have kept the wand. I mean, he didn't have to use it. He could have just opened up the greatest, wand repair shop in the world.
I think,
What's that? It's shattered into a million pieces? No problem. Reparo. There you go. 10 galleons, please.
Bellatrix died just like her cousin. Yeah, I don't think Narcissa, like,
Mm.
dug into Harry on purpose. I don't think it was malicious. I think she was trying to,
Look, stay down.
well, she was trying to, like, stand back up. You know, she crouched down. I think she just dug into him when she was trying to stand back up. Maybe she has long fake nails. I have long real nails. They hurt. Ask anyone in my family.
It's true.
So, you like how it ended?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And back on the other chapter, too, parallel, they're at King Cross Station.
Yes, they were at King's
Mhm.
Cross. That's right. Yep.
And could have carried on to the next life or go back to Hogwarts. He went to Hogwarts.
Yes. See, Joey Roo knows about long nails, too. Sometimes they hurt. Sometimes they're a pain.
I don't know how you do it. Long nails, just... That's a story for another time.
That is another... Voldemort has long nails in the movies.
It does? Well, the book, it does...
Yeah,
they're like pointed and they
on the back of the book cover, he has long nails too. You know,
because
he's got these long.
They look like the reptile like nails.
Yeah, reptile claws. So many parallels. Harry is just tired.
Well, I mean, he did just fight a war. I mean, come back from the dead.
Yeah.
Didn't even get any sleep. Sorry, morning.
He just wants Creature to bring him a sandwich
right,
so he can sleep. Yeah, they describe his fingers as being like long, spidery. No.
Yeah.
I wish I had long, spidery fingers.
No.
It'd be cool.
No.
Yeah. I wish I had really long fingers.
That's creepy.
I got these like chunky
You look
ones.
like what is it? The thing from Coraline. Coraline.
What's going to happen to all the dark creatures that Voldy brought? Yeah, I don't want to be the cleanup crew that has to like get the Dementors back in order.
Yeah, that's I guess that's what's his name's job now?
Kingsley
Minister
Shacklebolt. That's Kingsley Shacklebolt's problem.
Congratulations, Kingsley. You're the minister. Now help us round up these Dementors. I never wanted this position.
I would assume Hagrid maybe like kind of like a giant liaison kind of thing to relocate the giants.
Yeah, and probably Grop. Grop's kind of learning English. He's, a little bit of a crossover. He can translate a little bit. This is Hagrid.
Hagrid!
That's Hagrid. That's about it.
So what do you now think of Dumbledore?
Yeah, my opinion hasn't really changed on him too much. Still an awesome dude. My favorite character.
Dumbledore is pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Now we know, officially, what he would have seen in the mirror, how he felt about what happened with his family. Yes. All that stuff.
Poor
All
Dumble.
Poor Dumbles.
It's rough. It's rough being the most skilled wizard. Even in death, he's just so cocky. I love it.
Yes, that was a guess. And usually I'm right.
Usually my guesses are very good.
Yep. Yeah, Dumbledore having flaws makes him that much more of a real person.
Exactly.
That is what's great
He's
about
not
him.
just this incredibly smart wizard.
Right, he's not just a super gifted... in the sense that, like, Gandalf is. But Gandalf is also not human.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's kind of, I guess... Gandalf is a different... maybe not a good comparison.
But on that comparison, I really wish they got the actor who played Gandalf to play Dumbledore after the original actor died. I think it would have done a lot better.
Ian McKellen as Dumbledore?
Yes, there we go. I wanted to say Patrick Stewart, but it's not Patrick Stewart. He's married to Patrick Stewart, isn't he?
No!
No?
No, Patrick Stewart is... I don't think he's gay.
Yeah, he is.
I don't think so.
I could have sworn he was.
I don't think Patrick Stewart is gay. Ian McKellen is.
Maybe I'm wrong. I could have sworn he was.
Oh, Katie says he was asked to play Dumbledore. I guess he turned it down.
Oh.
Well, it would be a little confusing, because he's Dumbledore and Gandalf.
It would be, but people already confuse him.
That's true.
There have been so many people who have called Dumbledore Gandalf, or have called Gandalf Dumbledore.
They're best
They do
friends.
look like very
well,
similar.
I'm sure Dumbledore is partly inspired by Gandalf to a certain
Probably.
degree.
Well, they're like the classic wizard look,
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I mean. They were friends. He already played Gandalf. He was like, I'm not gonna play Dumbledore. It makes sense.
It makes sense.
From a career perspective. I get
It would have been
I
a good
know.
fit.
That's just like I wish Brian Cox had played Mad-Eye Moody.
That,
I get it.
I guess if you had to have like that dream team of actors.
Yes. I mean, Maggie Smith was so perfect as McGonagall. She just...
Oh, 100%. That is 100% how I picture McGonagall.
Mm-hmm.
There have been the characters where I picture them slightly different. But, like, Snape is a huge one. Totally different. I think the actor who played him did a good job.
He was
but
just...
he did not look the part.
He was too
fully.
old. That was the only problem.
That too.
Just too old. Alan Rickman in his 30s, that would have been perfect.
Yeah.
Because when you realize Snape is supposed to be in his mid-30s, and then you're watching the movies, and you're like, Snape is not like 35 in this movie. There's no way.
A point on this chapter, too. He said that Draco was alive, and by all accounts, that's what he knows, to the best of his knowledge. Did we see Draco again in the chapter? I don't remember.
Yeah, at the very end of this chapter, they said that all three of the Malfoys were sitting in a corner by themselves.
Oh, okay. Man, I forgot that. I just didn't hear Draco mentioned.
No,
so
they said it was all three of them. So
Okay.
they didn't say Draco specifically. So they all made it. They all survived.
So I was
and-
like, he got knocked out in the middle of the battle, Things happen.
Right? Yeah.
Walls fall down.
Stuff gets blasted apart.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a little too soon. I was going to say Fred knew that, but a little too soon still. Rest in peace, Fred.
Oh, Fred. I love that Molly Weasley was the one that did it, too. Killed Bellatrix. It was fucking awesome. Don't mess with her family. Don't do it.
I know, Harry got Voldemort, she got Bellatrix, so it's only fitting that Neville got the snake. I mean...
Come on. Yeah.
Maybe that's why they put Bellatrix, burning the Weasley's house in the movie. To, build up that feud with Molly and Bellatrix.
You didn't need to! It was stupid! Stupidest thing never happened in those fucking movies, I swear to God.
It was-
Burn the burrow down!
I'm not agreeing with it, I'm just rationalizing it.
Yeah, maybe. I think Bellatrix trying to kill one of her children is enough
Yeah,
for
no,
Molly
she's
Weasley.
enough.
Especially after one of her other children just died.
Mm-hmm.
Just died. I don't have any Harry Potter tattoos, but I am always on the fence about getting one.
Ooh, yeah, we were actually talking about that when we first started the stream. Can't remember with who, but yes, we were talking about that.
Yeah, Harry Potter tattoos. Maybe someday.
She definitely wants to get one. Not sure what, though. And, I wouldn't be opposed to getting one. But, I mean, we just finished the book. I really don't know
I have no idea.
where I would even start.
I've got a couple of ideas, but like I said, I definitely wouldn't want to do anything cliche. And also, I don't know if I want my first tattoo to be Harry Potter.
Why not?
I don't know, because I don't know what I would want it to be. Aminals, too.
Just get a Harry Potter tattoo, get it out of the way, then you don't have to worry about, oh, but it's my first tattoo. You no longer have that stress to hold you back.
Fair enough.